there seems to be a ton of regulatory pressure, both from actual regulators and also what I'll call more of kind of the politicians or people who are elected officials. Maybe let's just start with how you view regulation. Obviously, as a public company CEO, you're regulated by a ton of different organizations. There's all these different rules. How do you view the regulation? And is there a thing as like good regulation, bad regulation, or how do you look at this?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting dynamic that's happening recently, but honestly, it's been happening for the entire time that Coinbase has been around, nine years or so. It's just kind of the intensity keeps dialing up every year because crypto keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so generally, I view this all as a very positive trend. In the early days of Coinbase, we made a conscious decision. We said, hey, we want to go out there and work proactively with regulators and educate them, get licenses, do whatever we need to do because we want this technology to go mainstream. I want there to be 1 billion people accessing an open financial system every day through our products and other companies to get the benefit of this technology. And I knew that, in most parts of the free world, this was not going to be outlawed or something like that. At least I didn't think that was very likely, but it would be regulated. I felt like, society is not going to just allow this to proliferate completely unregulated. So over time, we went and we got money transmitter licenses and we started interfacing with all of the federal regulators. And actually today, Coinbase interfaces and interacts with 54 different regulators just in the United States. And we're actually in, about 30 or 40 countries globally. And so we're very much a global company. So we interface with similar counterparts in other places. So where is this all going? I mean, for a long time, the crypto industry, I think, has been asking for clarity from the regulators out there and saying, this is also new. And now I don't blame the regulators, by the way, for not coming out with a ton of clarity quickly. It's such a brand new thing. It actually might have been a mistake to come out with it too quickly because there are examples historically probably of regulation that's come out. It's like kind of overreacted or it tried to define something too soon. And this space is evolving so quickly. So, they kind of let it percolate. We sort of shoehorned the regulation into the existing frameworks that are out there, like money transmission. But now with the advent of all this stuff, the government is starting to get more pressure and say, hey, what are we going to do about this? And so you're seeing this kind of dance that's happening, a little bit of healthy tension, I would call it, between the regulators now who are coming out and saying, all right, y'all, we need to get this figured out. What's unfortunate, sometimes they're kind of doing that through enforcement actions, which I don't think is necessarily fair if they haven't kind of already just, picked up the phone and said, hey, here's our opinion on this. Like, we want to enforce a level playing field across the industry. Everybody do this. I haven't seen that happen in some cases, which is a little frustrating. They're kind of going right to enforcement, which I think sort of sets up a negative tone. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. If it happens via enforcement or more internal dialogue and everything like that, we'll eventually get to a place where we start to create legal precedents. More of this stuff becomes clear, and the court may end up having to eventually decide on some of these things, like which of these tokens are securities. In the absence of clarity about that topic, I mean, we have the Howey test, right? But the Howey test was created back in 1946 in a world pre-internet. It was like right after World War II, right? So how could this Howey test apply to this brand new financial system we're creating? Basically, every founder and investor and their highly paid lawyers are all kind of trying to tease out, like, read the tea leaves about what this could possibly mean for their business. And it's created this kind of wide variety of interpretations and a completely ambiguous environment, which kind of stifles startups. And some of those startups have decided to go abroad to incorporate because of the lack of clarity in the US. So now we're sitting here in this environment where, in the absence of that clarity, Coinbase went out and sort of, we created things like the Crypto Rating Council. We created a very thorough digital asset listing process internally that looked at compliance and legal and security, cybersecurity. And we were actually pretty cautious about a lot of the assets we added. At the time that Coinbase had maybe 50 assets or so, there was some of our competitors had hundreds of them, right? And now we have about 100 assets total that we've gotten comfortable with. Many of them, other ones we've rejected. And so I would expect this whole environment is just over the next year or so, it's going to be a series of enforcement actions, a series of behind closed door discussions, legal precedent getting created. There will probably be broker-dealer licenses incorporated, or I should say operationalized. Coinbase went out and got its broker-dealer license a while back, but we haven't operationalized it because there aren't any security tokens that our customers want to to actually trade. And so maybe once we get that operational, and then other crypto tokens will then be pushed to register with the SEC. We actually want to make that easy as well through a product we have called Coinbase Asset Hub, and just make it super simple for any asset issuer to come, form a smart contract or however they want to do it, create a new asset, register it with the SEC if they need to do that in the US, do a Reg S offering if they want to do it abroad. So we want to try to make all of this easier, more regulated. I think we're all pretty much aligned, even the regulators and the industry. There's just going to be a bunch of silly headlines and uncomfortable conversations as that all plays out.
So I want to try to kind of summarize what I believe to be your all's position, but if I misspeak, correct me, is basically, look, we want to play within the rules. We think regulation is generally good, but in some areas we don't know what the rules are, and so we're trying our best, but if we don't know what those rules are, and then all of a sudden we get told, hey, don't do that, it's kind of hard to operate a business with uncertainty. Feels like that's one kind of talk track or viewpoint. Another is, hey, there's things that we think should be allowed that feels like the regulators are telling us they aren't allowed, and we want to have a discussion, and maybe there isn't a discussion at the level that you want to have it, or you're not getting guidance that you're looking for, et cetera. And then there's like this third world, which is basically like, hey, we do things as a publicly traded company in a regulated environment in the United States, but like look globally, and there's people doing all kinds of different things. And so there's like a global competition going on. How much does the US want to over-regulate or regulate versus like wide open free markets and just let everyone go, let the free market decide? Is that kind of a fair characterization of like maybe like the 3 points around regulation and where you sit?
That's a really great articulation of it. Yeah. I do think that's really important to remember as well, the last point you said, which is that we are living in a global free market, right? US citizens actually are going and using products that are created abroad increasingly because they're not able to get the stuff they want in the US. So that's a risk. I think the US government, again, we're a global company. I talk to regulators all over the world, but one thing I noticed when I go to DC is that I think 50% of the people I talk to in DC, roughly, they're still thinking of crypto as a risk. They think this is scary, this is dangerous. They have all kinds of misconceptions in their head about the percentage of activity that's for illicit purposes and all this, which is actually much smaller than most of them realize. It's probably about 1% or less, whereas the US dollar cash is like 3 to 4% illicit activity, right? But in their mind, they think it's like 50% illicit activity. So that's probably half the people I meet in DC. And the other half they realize that this is actually a huge opportunity. It's a hugely important new industry for the United States and every country around the world, and that they exist in a competitive environment where the US needs to be attracting these entrepreneurs, getting these foundational companies built here. And that, frankly, the American citizens really want these products and services. Tens of millions of Americans, this is not a fringe thing anymore. Coinbase has 60 million verified users, and we're just one company. So there's tens of millions of Americans who want to use these products and services. They're getting a benefit from it that they're not getting from the traditional financial system. And ultimately, the citizens elect our government, and the government appoints regulators and everything like that. And so I think that if they are too hard on crypto, basically it's going to become politically infeasible. They're not going to have the will of the people behind that. It's almost like prohibition or something like that historically. Like you can't go out and like try to criminalize something that 50 million Americans are doing. You're just going to turn them all into criminals, but they're not going to stop doing it. And so I think that's maybe one of the big things that hasn't been realized yet in DC.
So what's up, guys? Bang, bang. Thanks so much for watching the Best Business Show today. If we're going to be the best business show, we obviously need the best partner. That's why the exclusive sponsor of the Best Business Show is SoFi. They're an all-in-one platform that allows you to invest in all kinds of different assets, including stocks, ETFs, crypto, IPOs, and they even have an automated investing function, if that's your thing. So before we start getting after it again, make sure that you go download SoFi, you get an invest account, and when you make your first crypto trade, regardless of what you buy, they'll give you $10 in Bitcoin for free. It's that simple. Head on over to SoFi.com/pomp to get started today. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you come back and watch more of the Best Business Show tomorrow.